Have you been told to read English books in order to improve your English language learning? Perhaps you've tried this and it just didn't work. You might have found it boring. You might have found it too difficult because the language was just way too hard for you to understand. I recognize this difficulty. Therefore, I have created a new novel that has been designed specifically for adult English language learners. I want to make reading fun for you. I want to make all of your English language learning fun. Therefore, I have created a story full of mystery and suspense that will keep you wanting to read on and on and on. So, in today's episode, I am going to start reading to you my novel, The Vanishing Guest. So today, I'm going to start reading to you The Vanishing Guest. As I read this, I will pause at different moments to explain some of the vocabulary that has been used, making this book accessible for you. You can download your own copy of The Vanishing Guest at my website. Check out the information in the show notes and read along with me. Now, let's get into the chapter. As I go through the chapter, I will pause in places to explain some of the vocabulary. Chapter 1, The Guest. The Grand Orchid Hotel was a place of quiet opulence, which means extreme richness or luxury. Its sprawling lobby, meaning it spreads out over a very large area, adorned with gleaming marble floors and an enormous crystal chandelier, whispered of wealth and secret. The clientele, so the usual customers, were the kind who liked discretion, which means they didn't want people talking about their business. They were very private. Wealthy travelers, diplomats, and occasionally people who didn't want to be found. Clara Evans had worked as the hotel's night receptionist for only a week, but she already felt a strange combination of safety and vigilance while working there. There was something about the Grand Orchid that made it feel alive in a way that buildings shouldn't. The corridors carried whispers, even when empty, and the shadows seemed to cling to the corners a little too tightly. So cling means you're holding on to something so tightly. Clara enjoyed working at the hotel despite its almost eerie atmosphere. Eerie meaning creepy, chilling. Its grandeur, so its great magnificence, was a vast contrast, meaning it was very different to the normality of her personal life, if you could call it normal. The last few years had been difficult for Clara. Between the death of her mother Kate and the eviction notice that had appeared on her apartment door last month, life hadn't been easy. Mr. Redford, the hotel manager and a close friend of her late mother, had offered Clara the job as night receptionist just a few weeks ago. She'd guessed he'd taken pity on her after her tragic loss, amongst the many other trials and tribulations of her life. So that means amongst the other challenges of her life. Things finally seemed to be on the up. Finally, she had waited long enough. She still had to deal with the remaining administrative tasks that come along with the death of a loved one. There was no one else who could. It had always been just her and Mum, ever since Kate had adopted Clara when she was just 9 years old. The man arrived at 11 p.m. He walked through the glass doors as if he owned the place. That means he walked through really confidently. His trench coat dripped with rainwater, though Clara was certain it hadn't rained all day. His shoes left faint, wet footprints on the marble floor, which disappeared almost as quickly as they had appeared. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Grand Orchid." Clara greeted him, her voice steady despite the flicker of unease that she felt. So that means a feeling of slight unsettlement. He looked up, and for the briefest moment, Clara was caught in his gaze. His eyes were green, unnaturally so, like shards of emerald glass catching the light. He removed his hat with a slow, deliberate motion. So he's moving slowly on purpose. He means to do this. Revealing neatly combed dark hair, streaked with silver. "I'll need a room," he said, his voice low and smooth. There was a faint accent that Clara couldn't place. Something Eastern European, perhaps. "Of course," she replied, trying not to fumble with the keyboard. Trying not to fumble means that she's trying not to make mistakes while she's typing. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, but I believe room 207 will suffice." Clara froze. Room 207. It had been unoccupied for weeks. Unoccupied means nobody's using it. Ever since a guest had checked out unexpectedly and left behind a strange assortment of personal items. So an assortment is a collection of different things. A broken pocket watch, a faded photograph of an unlit street, and a key to something no one had identified. She hesitated but nodded. "One moment, sir." As she processed his request, she felt his eyes on her, like he was studying her every move. When she handed him the key, his fingers brushed hers for a moment, and she felt a strange chill. "Will you need anything sent up to your room, Mr.?" She trailed off, hoping he'd offer his name. But he simply smiled, a thin, calculated smile that didn't reach his eyes. Not yet. He picked up his suitcase, an old, battered leather thing. Battered meaning it's been bashed around or damaged many times. An old, battered leather thing that looked heavy but seemed to glide effortlessly as he carried it and headed to the elevator. Clara watched him go, noting how the shadows in the corridor seemed to stretch as he walked past. The night passed uneventfully, meaning nothing really happened, until around 3 a.m., when Clara noticed something strange. The guest from 207 hadn't called down for anything, which wasn't unusual, but the bellboy who had been making his rounds, that means doing his duties, reported that no light had been visible under the door the entire time. "Maybe he is asleep," Clara had suggested. "Maybe," the bellboy had replied, but his tone suggested he wasn't convinced. So he didn't quite believe what she was saying. "I swear, though, when I passed by earlier, I thought I heard voices coming from his room." Clara frowned. "Voices?" The bellboy nodded. "Yeah, like he was arguing with someone. But no one else ever went in there and the door never opened." Clara made a mental note to check upon the guest in the morning. At 7 a.m., the first light of dawn filtered through the lobby's tall windows. So it is traveling through the windows. Clara's shift was almost over when she realized that she hadn't seen or heard from the man in room 207. Normally, guests left at least a sign of their presence. So presence is your being here. A call for room service, a request for extra towels. But he had been silent all night. She decided to check on him before handing over to the day staff. Clara knocked slightly on the room of door 207. "Good morning, sir. Is there anything that you need?" she called. There was no answer. She knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. A strange unease settled over her. Using her master key, she unlocked the door and pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was perfectly made, the suitcase was gone, and the air smelled faintly, so slightly, of something metallic, like blood or rust. The window was open, the curtains billowing in the morning breeze. So they are moving with the wind. Clara stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room for clues. So her eyes are scanning the room. She's looking all around the room. On the nightstand was a single glass of water, untouched. On the desk was a folded piece of paper. She picked it up and unfolded it carefully. The note read, "Clara, be careful whom you trust." Her heart stopped. How did he know her name? Thank you so much for joining me for Chapter 1 of The Vanishing Guest. I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and I hope that you learned some new words today with today's episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please let me know in the comments, and don't remember to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next chapter. Before you go, I'm going to read you some comprehension questions to test your understanding of what we have read. Can you remember the name of the main protagonist in our story? Question 2. What is the name of the hotel in the story? Question 3. What is the name of the hotel manager? Question 4. What was the number of the room where the mysterious guest stayed? Let me know your answers in the comments, and I hope to see you next week for the second installment of The Mysterious Guest. See you soon! Let's take a quick break while you grab a coffee and digest what we've learned so far. While you do that, I'm going to talk about what's been going on in my book club recently. The votes are in and we have begun reading our first English novel. Our first live stream was a success, and I am so happy that the book club is bringing people together from all across the globe. If you love reading too, why don't you try it out? There's a 7-day free trial, so you really have nothing to lose. But I know you're going to love it. You will be automatically added to the Discord community chat where you can experience real conversations with me and other English language learners just like you. Check out all the information. All the information is available on my website. That's learnenglish.podia.com. You can also find all the information that you need in the show notes for today's episode. Now, let's get back to it.